actually specially designed for us, especially our new analysts, that's our new members, to strengthen our knowledge and our skills in investment and market research generally. And today we are privileged to have with us um, a research analyst from Assets and Resources Management Holding Company, that's ARM Holdco, a person of Calista Chileke, and she'll be taking us through how research is done in practice, um, the key frameworks that analysts use, and generally just how to interpret our research output and help our presentation, particularly of this research that we make. So thank you once again for being here. Just a second, I would like to confirm that our speaker is on the call before I proceed. Oh, okay, she is. Thank you so much, Calista, for joining us today. And we look forward to gaining a lot from this session, as research is actually general in our society. So regardless of the division, our mission is to ensure that all our members are good in making research and to aid their presentation also. So thank you once again for joining us. And I think I'll hand over to you now to start your session.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Can anyone hear me? All right.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I understand that everybody here is prospective research analysts. Everybody here wants to work in a finance house as a research analyst. If you want to, just give a thumbs up or something. Or you're just here just to gain the knowledge. Which one is it? Okay. All right. So yeah, I'll just be taking us through the basics of investment research. Research is very broad, and there are a lot of things that you need to know before getting into research. And if you realize that you're someone who might not want to go too in depth into something, or if you're not curious, then maybe research is not for you, because the whole essence or crux of research is curiosity. You need to question why is growth like this? Why do you think that this company is going to do 4 times its PE in the next 5 years? Why? Like, the question on your lips should be why. I'm just looking for my slides actually. Give me a second. What's the name? Okay. Um, okay, give me a second. Like, I have to share my entire screen. Anyway, okay. Just tell me when my screen comes up. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I'll just go straight to my slides and come here. Okay. So welcome to today's class. So we're talking about investment market research, what it's about, and how to do. So at the end of it, so I hope we'll have enough time so that we can just do like one or two basics on, or you can ask questions and then we will just do it in practical. Okay, so what is investment market research? So investment market research basically involves gathering information and analyzing that information that you have gotten. So information you get can be either market level, can be as maybe equities or fixed income market, can be sector specific. What kind of sector are you interested in? Consumer goods, can be domestic, it can be global, it can be insurance sector, it can be oil and gas sector. It can also involve gathering information about macroeconomic variables like inflation, unemployment, GDP, and whatnot. And you analyze those analyze that information, analyze the data, and you make inference from it to support investment decisions. Because at the end of every research, the major goal of every research or every research analyst is to, after making sense of the information, you have to make recommendations based on the data that you have analyzed. Because if you're not able to come to a conclusion, come to a recommendation, what is the usefulness of that your analysis to investors, to readers of your report, right? So that is the whole essence of research, and that's what research is basically about. You gather data, analyze the data, and you make recommendations based on the data that you have gotten. So, purpose of market research. One is to identify promising sectors or asset classes for investment. So, like I said, particularly for data that is gotten market level, right? Market level equities market, fixed income market. So, you, as a research analyst, what you do is for this particular proposal, if you're trying to value a company, you have to get their financial statement. You have to analyze that financial statement, do your valuations and whatnot. And at the end of the day, you come to a recommendation, come to a conclusion to say, oh, buy this asset, or buy this company, don't buy this company. And when you make a recommendation, there has to be a why, like there has to be a reason that is backing your recommendation. You can't just say buy and then there's no reason. Why are we buying? Do you see something that other people are not seeing? Because sometimes you might be the only research analysts in Nigeria that is saying buy a particular stock, and other people are saying sell. So you will need to properly defend your analysis and whatnot. So that's one reason why we do market research is to identify promising sectors or asset classes for investment. So for those of us that want to work in a finance house or an investment house, and say research analyst, even as a portfolio manager or as a investment banker, everybody needs to do research. And in your research, you must be able to properly make recommendations for investments. Another one would be to understand how economic policies and conditions affect market outcomes. So for macroeconomic research, so based on looking at inflation, looking at GDP, you have to. So one thing we need to know is research is not the same as reporting, right? Research is not the same as reporting. What you read on Punch newspaper, what you read on Business Day, is not the same as the proper research analysis, right? Because inflation will come out and they'll say, oh, inflation has gotten down to 16.02%, and this is what was this thing? If the headline inflation is at 16.02%, when inflation is at this, core inflation is at this, and they just leave it at that. But as a research analyst, you need to go into the nitty-gritties, right? You need to be able to know what is the driver of the inflation policy. What's the driver of the inflation data? Is this the lowest it has been in the last 20 years? Is this the highest it has been in the last 10 years? That sort of thing, right? What happened during the months that could have driven inflation? Did Dangote refinery shut down? Was there higher fuel prices? The fuel prices crash? You have to go behind the data. You can't just come and say inflation came down. Why? Why did inflation come down? Like, why did it go up? Do you understand? So that's sort of thing. So you need to understand, that is the crux of being a research analyst. You also need research to be able to anticipate shifts in consumer demand that affects corporate earnings. So when you see that inflation is climbing, another thing that a research analyst does is to be able to link. You need to be able to link various policies, various issues in the economy to everything else, right? So one thing I like to say is there's some sort of transmission mechanism in the economy. Everything affects everything, right? So inflation affects growth affects equities markets, inflation affects interest rate affects fixed income market. So you need to be able to properly link. So when you see inflation coming up, when you see the prices of global sugar, climbing, right? What does that mean for you as a research analyst? So a normal person, a newspaper, would just say, oh, sugar prices are climbing, oh, so and so. So and they will stop there. But what does that mean for the common man? If you bring it down to Nigeria, sugar prices are climbing. What can that mean for Dangote sugar? What would that mean for their stock prices? Do you think that goods will become more expensive in terms of the higher cost of raw material? Do you think that will impact their valuation? There are other things you need to be like when you see a policy, you need to try in your head to just map out the different things policy could that policy could impact. That's what I think. So for example, this new how many of us have heard about the new tax laws? Let me go back here. So I can see how many of us have heard about the new tax laws. Okay, so yeah, so okay, maybe we'll get there and then just remember this is my question. And so as I'm talking, think about how these new tax laws could impact the Nigerian economy. Just have it, so we'll discuss it. Anyway, so my point here is just try to see how various policies, various issues, various variables, tie together and form like transmission mechanism into the broader to form the broader picture. Because everything doesn't happen in isolation. So inflation has an impact on goods, inflation has an impact on MPC decision, MPC decision falls to interest rate. Interest rate has an impact on markets. What could that mean for foreign portfolio investments? What could that mean for exchange rates? So like if you could draw like a tree or a mapping tree, right, you see how all these variables actually tie together. And if you're able to hack, the transmission mechanism or transition or the analysis of these variables, then I think that you are halfway into becoming like a proper research analyst. Yeah. To track investor behavior and capital flows across asset classes. Yes, you need research for that. Most of these are, data available on NGX. You can see, maybe we'll check that as time goes on. You can see the amount of foreign participation in the Nigerian equities market as compared to domestic participation, also retail and institutional. And then that way you can now start thinking that, okay, we don't have like data has shown that domestic participation is much more higher than for like foreign participation into markets, meaning that maybe FPIs, the impact of FPIs may not be able to properly move the market, as they used to before because of their small number in the market. But then again, could the rating upgrades of this FTS Eurozone by Fitch, by FTS Eurozone, by S&P 500, could that have an impact on bringing in more FPIs into our Nigerian equities market? You see, that's when you start asking those kind of questions, then you start thinking like a research analyst. So research is very interesting. It can be gruesome. It can be a lot of work, but at the end of the day, it's interesting, and you'll be surprised as to you think you have done everything, but then somebody also come with another angle, and you'll be like, okay, it makes sense actually. So that is just the beauty of research. Support due diligence in mergers, acquisition, of private investments. So for those of us that want to get into private equity, venture capital, you still do research. You're not going to run away from it. As far as you're in finance, there's a tendency that you are going to touch a bit of research. So if you're working on a M&A deal, you need to carry out due diligence on the company you're trying to merge with or acquire as a venture capitalist or a P&E firm. So you need to carry out due diligence, see whether putting my money there, putting my company's money here is going to make us some money. So that is research for you. So macroeconomic variables. I'm sure we've heard of this, right? I've mentioned it in the last couple of slides, but we'll just touch briefly. So macroeconomic variables. So first of all, we have GDP. Now GDP basically measures the total value of goods and services produced in an economy, and typically higher GDP would mean economic growth. The economy is growing. Recently, Nigeria based their GDP, and maybe we should just read up on it. just read up on it. So rebasing, they rebased, basically changed the base year from, I think previously it was 2009 or so, and then they changed it to 2019. So they changed it to 2019. So that is just basically the rebasing and sort of change like our growth figures and whatnot. Yeah, so higher GDP will typically mean, economy is growing. So currently Q2 2025, Nigeria GDP is at 4.13%, which is great. First time that reached 4% in a long while, right? So that is great. And then when you're writing that report as a research analyst, GDP grew by 4.13%. You have to think of when was the last time it reached 4%. You check. If it was not too far back, then that means there's no story. So yeah. So when you're writing a research report, you need to check for the story. So every report, every analysis you do, because you're going to do a lot of reports writing, you don't want to run the risk of regurgitating the same thing over and over again. Because most of this data comes, they come out periodically, right? So you don't want to keep on writing the same thing over and over again, keep on writing the same format over and over again. So you need to find the story. What exactly is the story? Did something phenomenal or spectacular happen in this particular data I'm looking at? That is what your focus should be. Okay, so for inflation basically indicates how fast goods and prices of goods and services are rising in an economy, the measure of purchasing power, and typically higher inflation will lead to tighter monetary policies, stance of interest rates as well as other monetary policy tools. So that's where you get when inflation is high. Last year, I'm sure we're hearing a lot of MPC is increasing interest rate, they're mopping up liquidity, that sort of thing, CRR, cash reserve ratio, liquidity ratio, open market operations, stuff like that. So that period, I'm sure you've been hearing a lot of terminology because of the high inflation rate, right? So but we'll get into all of that. Now, interest rate is set by the central bank. There's a committee that meets bi-monthly every 2 months in Nigeria. It's called the Monetary Policy Committee. Another one, their last meeting for the year is holding next week, 24th and 25th. So you guys should follow up on it. Inflation has been trending downwards, right? Okay, I'm going to assume that we're following the news, right? Let me go back to this place. Are we following the news on inflation, interest rates, MPC? Do we follow the news on that? Anybody? Anybody? Okay. So Kade Miria, you're gonna be our analyst for today. So I'm going to ask you a question later on. You guys should know. I don't want to forget though. Okay. Anyway, so interest rates set by the CBN's Monetary Policy Committee, and next meeting is next week. I think Monday and Tuesday, right? So higher rates, when they increase interest rates, you see that borrowing is more expensive. So they set like the benchmark interest rate, which is the monetary policy rate, right? MPR, and that's sort of like the benchmark rate for determining other interest rates in the economy. So banks, they set their interest rates around the MPR. Unemployment rate, of course, lower unemployment just measures the percentage of people living in a country who are without a job or within a particular age bracket who are willing and not able to work. Lower rate indicates a strong economy usually, and high employment rate signals economic distress and can prompt government intervention. So currently, a lot of people do not trust Nigeria's unemployment data because they did some rework and it came down drastically from 3% to about 3%, and they just let's focus on the data for now. Then the exchange rate is one that is very important, measures the value of one currency relative to another. Okay, Kadi, your question is here now. Where is my mouse? Oopsies. Okay, Kadi, can you hear me? I think it was Kadi in area.
Maria, can you hear? Okay, yes, she can hear you.
Okay, so I have a question for you. What do you think the next MPC is going to be like? What do you think the decision of the next MPC meeting is going to be? If you are following the inflation, following the, I want you to tie like the next MPC meeting to what's currently going on in the economy and form like an outlook for the meeting. Maria is still here.
I don't really know. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for that question. But I don't really know too much on the interest rates per se, except just the normal things that like we see on news and
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's fine. Does anybody want to try though? Anybody want to try? Is anybody raising up? Oh, okay. I
Hello,
think
good afternoon.
good afternoon, Adam. Was that you? Yeah.
Ye- Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Um, what I can say about the next MPR is that every other thing held constant. If you are looking at the inflation rates as it was published by the MBS the last time, which was dropped to I think around 16%, and there is probability of reducing the MPR rate with that.
Okay. By how much?
Not by a really significant percentage, but at least to keep it lower than what it is currently.
Okay. What would that, how do I put it now? What would make them to not decrease it like significantly?
The economy is still trying to adjust, and the security issue and the news that are coming in this week are not really good for the economy as a whole, as they will undermine the confidence of the investor.
Hmm.
So that will actually have an impact.
Okay. That's great actually. Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Abdul
You're
Abubakar,
welcome.
hand is still. You want to say something?
Okay, good afternoon or good evening.
Yeah. Good evening.
So for me, I'm looking for like the MPR will be it will either be reduced or remain constant, like the one
Hmm.
MPR.
Why?
Because looking at like the season we are going to the December season, so like a festive period whereby
Mm-hmm.
the people will like maybe come back home for the festive period, and also the other people also want to buy what's it called food stuff and things to celebrate as well. So they will
Hmm.
like more money in the economy. So you may see the prices of goods maybe going high due to that demand and all of that. So um, the MPC, the committee will try to like okay to stabilize it with the inflation coming down of recent. So they may want to like make it constant, just to hold it basically. But to me, I don't think they want to increase the rate.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah, it's yeah, spot on. So that's the consensus actually that the NPC would consider another rate cut in this meeting. And one thing I just wanted to point out, you guys did absolutely great. Yeah, but as a prospective research analyst here, one thing you should consider doing is try to add figures to your analysis or something when you're asked a question or something. So add figures. Oh, we see inflation at so and so. Also, we're seeing stability in the exchange rate, stabilizing around 1,400 levels. Our external reserves are at this as well, and all this just ties together and strengthens the case for a further rate cut at the next MPC meeting. Overall, our thinking is that interest rates will fall by maybe a 25 basis point, 50 basis point, 100 basis point, then stuff like that. Just tie everything together. And another thing I want to point out would be also try to look global in the sense that what happens in the global economy filters down to what happens in the Nigerian economy. So sometimes when we see all these major global central banks, making a dovish stance in the sense that they are cutting their interest rates, it would mean for us here in Nigeria that interest rates could go down as well. Do you understand? Because FPIs, foreign portfolio investors, would want to look at what is the real rate of return they could get from investing in our country or investing in all these advanced economies like US. So what they will look at is whether there's a positive real rate of return. So positive real rate of return is the difference between a country's inflation rate and its interest rates, right? So our interest rate is at 27% and our inflation rate is at 16%. So the difference there is about 11% difference. So if investors are putting their funds here, they are getting around an 11% interest rate, 11% return on their investments, right? And when you compare that to advanced economies, which have cut down their rates, and inflation is still, relatively higher, it's still high compared to what their benchmark is, right? You see that our real rate of return is somewhat higher than what those advanced countries than what is in advanced economies. So you will see that that's an incentive for FPIs to put in their funds into countries, like Nigeria, where they know that they're going to get, higher, higher returns on their investments. So when the CBN is, looking at all these things, they want to look at, okay, these guys cut their rates, then there's room for us to cut rates, for that, because they have reduced their real rate of return, and what ours is little bit is still high. Cutting it further would not do much difference because those guys have cut their rates. That's just how to look at it. Is everybody still with me? I'm just rambling.
No, well, with you.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's just continue. So sources of data for market research. So you can get from depending on type of research you're doing, whether primary type of research you're doing, qualitative, quantitative, you'll make use of either primary or secondary data sources. Now, for secondary qualitative data, your data from company earnings results. So you can see on my open tabs there, you can see some Dangote Sugar, Boa Foods, earnings reports, open that tab, and that's just because I'm trying to write a report on those companies, right? And company earnings reports and analyst calls. So you can just go on the NGX. On the NGX, you will see all the companies listed on the exchange, and you can get their earnings reports for the latest earnings results. And you can just try to analyze what the growth rate of their profits, of their revenue, key line items have been. And then for those of us that want to go straight into valuation, you can do that. And you'll be able to make a recommendation on whether to buy or hold or sell a particular stock. So industry and sector reports from other research houses. So as a student right now, you're just trying to brush up your knowledge on, or maybe just write a personal report on something, and subscribe to mailing list of some of these houses, ARM, Cardinal Stone, and the likes, right? and you can just get reports that they publish, and you can just get some data from some of those reports. Of course, official databases, MBS, CBN, IMF, World Bank, there are databases that you can use to get some data that you will need for your research reports. Also, financial data platforms, there's Bloomberg, there's investing.com, there's Reuters, Trading Economics, CIC, there's US Fed Watch, the various platforms. There's Yahoo Finance as well. So various platforms that you can use. Personally, at work, we use Bloomberg because it's paid, right? But I'm sure there are some free versions. I know investing.com has some data points, or you can get some data from investing.com. Consumer surveys now show primary qualitative data for primary data sources, consumer surveys, expert interviews, focus groups, depending on the kind of research you're trying to do, and web scraping, sentiment analysis, social media data. There's a website, there's US Fed Watch 2, and that's what that does is to gauge what the consensus is, whether the US Fed is going to hike rates or hold rates or cut rates at the next MPC meeting. So every day you'll be seeing that the barometer is, or the bar chart is going up and down. So you see 90% is for cutting rate, 5% is for hiking rate, or something like that. So tools for investment market research. What do you use for your market research? Of course, you use Excel. I have a couple of Excel sheets over on my laptop. You use Excel for financial modeling, for calculations, ratio analysis, scenario testing as well. So Excel or Google Sheets, depending on the ones you have access to. Very important. Power BI and Tableau. I don't use this, but I know it's very good for interactive dashboards as well as trend visualization. So when you're trying to get story for, when I said when you're writing your research report, you should be able to know a story. What is the story you're trying to tell with this report? So Power BI and Tableau are good for those. Bloomberg Terminal, of course, used for real. So on Bloomberg, maybe I will show you guys how to use Bloomberg or some functions there. On Bloomberg, you get to see real-time data, screening, valuations, different analysis reports, give you news as well. You can do a mini value, you can value a company for you there as well, or give you information to value a company. So that's what's on Bloomberg. Then Python and RS for data analytics, basically. So that one is more advanced for more advanced research. And question. Who is I can't find my mouse. So what courses are you guys from here? Anybody economics? Is anybody studying economics?
We have different, we have different topics. Okay, I think there is already.
Okay, that's cool. So for economics, you guys are using Stata, eViews. Believe me, we still use all that, or we still do some regression in research as well. So application in real life, so you can apply investment market research in various contexts. Equity research, like I said, understanding how macroeconomic and industry factors affect a company's earnings or outlook. Private equity, conducting market sizing, just doing research on your competitor analysis for a company, growth projections for specific companies or a sector. Asset management, how to use research in building your portfolios, right? What kind of growth do you want? Growth stocks or value stocks in your portfolio? You would need, you will need research for that. And corporate strategy, you need research to guide, your M&A deals, private strategy, depending on the, area of finance that you find yourself. Investment market research can be applied to that. All right, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I think what we'll do here now is maybe I should just take a few questions and then we'll just show us how to use Bloomberg, and just show we'll just do like a little case study on how to use Bloomberg to write maybe to write market reports for this week that just ended. Is that fine?
Okay, so you want to take questions now from us, right?
Yeah, I'll just do questions here.
All right,
Yeah.
so if you have questions, you can just signify by raising your hand or dropping it in the chat box and I'll read it out. So guys, please, if you have questions with regards to the presentation or whatever concerning research, now is the time to ask. So let me check. Okay, are there no questions? Okay, Kristen. Okay, Kristen, you can unmute and speak. We can't hear you, Kristen.
Can you hear me?
Can't hear you. You're something faint. If you're using earpods,
Can you hear me now?
maybe you should. Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, I said good evening. My question is,
Uh,
what is the difference between investment market research and equity analyst?
There is really no difference, to be honest, because equity research, investment market research, maybe equity, I don't see any difference, honestly, because maybe equity would majorly be focused on equity, of course, stocks, companies, sector analysis, and whatnot. Then investment market research would, try to bring in macro variables, into the mix. But of course, I think equity research also involves macroeconomic variables, analysis, and all that as well. So I don't think there's a big difference between an equity analyst and an investment market analyst. Yeah, one are the same.
all right. Okay, I think we have another hand raised up. Victor, you can unmute and speak.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Thank you so much, Kalista. I thought to ask, so I'm a newbie analyst in the team, and I've pretty much just been gathering up on the things that have been said and done recently since I joined. But I heard you said that research is not the same as reporting, and everything I know about the world of research has been just to gather feed from mostly reports as I know it, told journalism and all of that. But if you were to take up a novel research venture, do you have like the kind of check boxes that you would have, like checklists, the things that you would mark for conducting that entire survey? Like, what can a new person, someone who's new to all of this, what are the things to look out for and to take? Yeah.
A question. I think one thing would be to read a lot, because it's from reading that you will get, because as a research analyst, you are a writer. When I say researching is not like reporting, you are still a reporter and you're an analyst. So you have to, so sometimes you get writer's block even, and how to come out of that is to actually read, for you to know how to properly even start writing at first. But before you do any writing, the first thing you should do is to analyze the data. So when I say analyze the data, you should try to look at the data points, right? Try to check historicals, because history will definitely tell you a story. So if you're saying inflation is at 16% now, if you know last year, we're at 34, 32%, That's what down almost by half, right? And you try to see, okay, when was the last time this happened, right? You go back and then you see that it was sometime in 2022. So what happened in that 2022 that we are 16%? And how does that compare to now? So when you do all those analysis, you would have a basis to now start, right? While there will be some elements of reporting in there, there should be a distinction between what you've written and what people like Punch or Business they have written. Somebody should be able to pick up, your research report and find something key to take away from that report, right? So instead of just talking about, let's say, the inflation, but you can weave in the MPC, the impact this could have on the equities market, or the impact this could have on the MPC. So there's how you tie in. Like I said, there's always a transmission mechanism. So inflation is coming down. Consensus is that MPC will fluctuate. What could that mean for companies in the equities market? What could that mean for yields in the fixed income space? So when you bring all this together, you realize that what they written in Punch is way, way, way below what you have finished writing. So first of all, read a lot of research reports as a newbie, because even me, like my first work experience was I started off as a research analyst, right? So you have to do a lot of reading, you have to be very curious before you start writing, analyze the data, try to see historicals. When you are done with that, try to do like a transition, right? And see how this what you're focusing on could impact other areas of the economy. Yeah, that's just it.
All right. Thank you so much, Carissa. I think um, from what you said, I think it kind of confirms what I know about research, and it's just about being really curious. You need to be curious to be able to make research. Just if not, it's just going to be like reading sometimes. And I think that's something that we always try to emphasize. So we have some questions in the chat box. I'll just read them to you. So I think the first question says that you mentioned Excel being used for scenario testing. What is scenario testing and how is Excel used for it?
Okay, for scenario testing, I was just speaking to maybe when you get to evaluations and all. There's what we call base case scenario, bull case, and bear case scenarios. So that's how you can model your model. That's how you can build your model, right? To be able to, reflect what your recommendation would be. For example, what your recommendation would be for a company in your base case, when all factors being equal, this will be your recommendation buy. Then when you now switch because when you build the model, there is a sensitivity now or there's a drop down that where you can flip it and then to change to your gear case, because you'd already fed in the assumptions for your gear, for your bull, and for your base cases, right? So when you switch it to your gear case, you see what your recommendation will be under an entirely different assumption base, right? So that's just what I mean by scenario testing. But all that step by step and get evaluation, you'll be able to know more about that.
All right, thank you. So the next question, person said, good afternoon, Calista. You mentioned that after carrying out the research, we should always give a recommendation based on it. How would you communicate complex recommendation to non-technical stakeholders who may not understand some research terminologies?
That's actually a dilemma, to be honest, even at work. That's actually a dilemma. So okay. So the dilemma here is there's a risk of you being very untechnical, very non-technical, right? And you do that for so long, and then after a while you start losing grasp of the technical words that you're supposed to use and whatnot. So maybe you could try to separate your reports. Well, that's a a huge task or a huge ask, right? So when you're speaking to technical stakeholders, right, people will probably understand it. You have a special report for them. And then for the non-technical guys, you have another report for them. Or you can come to the middle and make your report, very easy to understand. Because really, as a research analyst, you should be able to find a balance, right? Your report should be very easy to understand. It shouldn't be too complex, to be honest. Because honestly, nobody has a lot, like major people do not have, major users of your reports may not have enough time to start Googling the meaning of discounted cash flow or P or price to book ratio, that sort of thing. They do not have time to start googling all that. You just try to you can use the technical words where they are needed, but when it's not specifically needed, you can just do it with it and just break it down simply. So instead of using words like bullish or bearish, you can just use the word positive, negative, that sort of thing. But for technical words that needs to be there, like when you're talking about price to earnings ratio, I don't know any other name that you can give to P ratio, right? So you can just leave it at that. I think that'll just be what I'll say.
All right, thank you. So for this last question, I think I'll merge it with my question actually. I think you actually spoke on this person's question, but if you'll be kind enough to just reiterate to us. So the person is saying that if I'm given a topic on research, how would I go about it? So in addition, I would like to ask for our members majorly, we do presentations, and I think where we have quite, let's say, little issues is the presentation aspect. So we keep saying we don't want people to read. So I would just like to confirm if that is actually a good concept of don't read. I don't know if you get my question. And if there are ways you think they can actually improve their presentation on research. Yeah, I think that's my question.
Okay. So when you get a new topic or research, how do you go about it? First of all, read on the topic. So take for example, MPC is coming up. Let me just try to open up something. MPC is coming up next week. You might want to MPC is coming up next week. So maybe that's the topic you are giving. That's the topic you are supposed to work on for next week, yeah? And you need to understand what would be what's that meeting is all about. So they usually publish this communique right after every meeting. So you read it so you can get insight on the type of discussion they had during that meeting. So when you read on that, you now start, okay, if they cut rates by further, right, in this next MPC meeting. The last time they cut the rates was, I said look at historical. So the last time they cut the rate was in September. But when was the last time we had 2 consecutive rate cuts? That's something you ask yourself. Okay, maybe that was in 2020 or 2019 or something. Right, what happened in 2019 that it made them cut rates? How can you compare it to what is happening now? And then you try to, okay, they've cut rates now. All right, how is that going to affect the broader economy? How is that going to impact the equities market? How is that going to impact the fixed income market? Because honestly, your readers are those that are invested in those 2 markets, equities and fixed income markets. So you have to know your audience. I think that's something I missed out. Know your audience actually. Who are you writing for? What kind of investments do they have? Are they foreign? They are foreign investors. Then you might not want to write a lot about stuff like money market or so. So you might want to be writing what the impact will be on Eurobond markets, equities markets, right? You might not be writing on things like Nigerian treasury bills or domestic or FGM bonds, that sort of thing. Because most of these foreign guys are invested in Euro bonds and the Nigerian stock market. So those are what you'll be focused on. Do you understand? So you have to know your audience. I think that's actually the first step. Know your audience, read, look at historical trend, compare it to what's happening now, and give impact on the investments of your audience. Basically, I think that's it. And now for presentation, presentation is a skill, right? Presentation is a skill that everybody needs. As a research analyst, you need to be able to properly communicate your recommendations, communicate your reports to people. And you have to do it in a way that is clear, concise, and not ambiguous. Okay, I think I just used the same words. Anyway, my point is you have to be clear in your presentation. And that is something that a lot of research analysts, find problems with, because we always hide behind our laptop screen, always writing. When they say, yeah, come and present, wahala. Do you understand? So it's a self-built skill. I don't think it's something that you have to be determined to learn it. And for a lot of us, it took us, a long time for us to, start to start properly presenting without reading anything or so. But I think what I did at the start of my career, hey, I'm a small girl. If I'm calling me ma, I'm not. I'm only 3 years experience, so don't worry. Like if I say ma, like I'm one Okonji. Anyway, my point is, I think at the start of my career, hey, look at me, start of my career. That's such a big girl word. Anyway, at the start of my career, I think what I used to do was I used to write down my talking points here so that when I see it, I know what to say. But you have to do it in such a way that it doesn't sound like you're reading it, because they're just there to guide you. So if you're saying today the MPC cut rates by 25 basis points as a result of lower inflation and blah 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 blah, you have to say it in such a way that it doesn't sound like you're reading from somewhere, because that's how you will sound where you can see, like I'm saying, you are presenting. Let me just read what's on my screen now. Or let me just read this. Let me read this inflation report. So we expect inflationary pressures to ease further in the near term. Food inflation should continue its downward trend as leftover harvest keep shelf stock. Now, someone is going to know that I'm reading. What if I say it this way? In November 2025, what we're expecting is that inflation pressures would ease further, particularly as food inflation continues its downward trend, because we're approaching festive seasons, that sort of thing, right? Because if you're just reading this as it is, just reading food inflation should continue the downward trend, core inflation doesn't like it, because there's how people will just know that you are reading from somewhere. But if you make it into a conversational tone, right, it will sound less of a reading thing that's going on. I hope that is. And then over time, you realize that you are able to even present without having any notes. Because I just even realized recently that I don't even need anything to present anymore. And I was like, okay, what's going on here? Because usually I used to wake up early, I'll write my talking points before I start presenting anything. But now, I don't know if it's laziness or something, but whatever I did, I like it because I don't use talking points anymore, right? And it just flows. Do you get? So, well, first of all, you have to be very, what's the word now? Intentional. You have to be intentional about improving your presentation skill, because it's very important. Because one day as a research analyst, you might find yourself presenting at maybe one of these Outlook webinars for your company, and you will not even be behind the laptop screen. You'll be in front of a stage, right? Talking to actual people. So what are you going to do then? Are you going to carry PDF and be reading? No way. So You have to be intentional about that. All right. I think time is fast spent, but before we go, let me just quickly show you Bloomberg. I don't know. Let me just quickly show you guys Bloomberg. Can you guys see my screen? Someone should unmute
Yes,
because I can't.
yes,
Okay.
yes. We can
Yeah.
see Bloomberg.
Sorry. Mm, what's going on? Okay, so this is Bloomberg. So you can search for any company, any index, search for anything here. So it's essentially your babalawo for research, that sort of thing. So NGX or share index. So we're gonna look for. Okay, so we can look for. Let's check for the movers for the week. So let's say I'm trying to write a market report on the equities market. Yeah. So what this shows? This shows you all the tickers that gained yesterday. This shows you all the tickers that gained. These are the top gainers for yesterday. These are the top losers for yesterday as well. You can see that yesterday the market lost 0.27%. There were 16 gainers, 36 losers, and 81 tickers were unchanged, right? But what if you wanted to write a report for the entire week? I think I need to hurry up because of my battery. So you come to history here. Come to history. Change your time period to 5 days. Right? So 5 days will be Monday to Friday. And generate reports. Yeah. Before we go into all this, I want to show you research presentation. So this is something. So one way you can make your presentations better will be just have chats. You just have chats so you can just speak to the chats themselves. This is not the best slides, right? But just have chats so that people are more focused on what you have to say than what is on the screen, and then you can allude to the chat. So you can see what this chart was trying to show is the stock market has posted losses all through this week. And then you give like a background of why it has posted losses, and then what's your outlook for the next week, that sort of thing. What should investors do, as you enter into the new week or to the new day or something like that, right? So use more charts, use more charts, use more tables. Let your chart titles, show what the chart is trying to say. So that way people will be more focused on what you are saying and try to link it to what is showing on their screen. So that's another way that you can try to control the audience. So back here to Bloomberg. So yeah, these are our reports. Okay, so now you can see that this week the market lost 2.26%. I said I was going to come back to the tax thing. Who did I bookmark for that? Who did I bookmark for tax? Okay, who wants to talk about the tax thing?
This CGT issue, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Do you need me to call someone and mention someone and the call?
I
Right,
don't
just
know if you're willing to answer. Okay, Elijah. This is Elijah.
um oh, is someone, I don't think anybody is.
No. Does anybody want to try? Okay, anyway, so the taxing is actually sort of a big deal right now. A lot of the whole market is reacting. The equities market has been reacting to the impact of the CGT on the on their investments, basically. So read up on it, right? Because it's a big thing that's happening. So because of the tax, there've been a lot of sell-off. So people have been selling and the market has been losing. Like this is the fourth consecutive week of losses. So you can see. So go to the history. When did these losses start? Right? Go back in history to check. So this is the fourth consecutive week of loss this month. So top gainers for the week were NCR, UPL, Tantalizer, Cavatin. If you want to do more deep work, you can try to. Oh, my battery is going. If you want to do more deep work, you can try to see why these stickers rose. For Tantalizer, a reason was they published a corporate disclosure and it was talking about how they entered an agreement to, get more into a partnership with exportation of, I think, was it fishery or something like that. So that went so well with investors and the stock gained, 17% this week. The UPO NCR covered it. I'm not sure why they gained, but if you check very well, they might have like a corporate disclosure or it might just be positive investor, sentiment to that. But UACN had a fact behind figures where they, threw more light on the acquisition of Chi Limited. I think it went well, it went down well with investors. So see, they gained 16.67%. So there's always a story behind this, these stickers. But sometimes it might not be not any story because sometimes it might just be investors just pushing up the stocks so that by next week I see some of these stocks now some of these stocks without stories now, some of them would be bleeding red. But yeah. So Int Engines, MC Nichols, Veritas Cap, ICO, these ones they all lost and were the top losers for yesterday for the week. But what we usually analyze as journalists are those big cap stocks where everybody's eyes are on, and they're usually what we call the movers of the market. So how do we get that? So we sort the points according from the highest to the lowest. So you can see Nestle. Nestle is a big guy. So Nestle has been Nestle, UACN, Julius Berger, Ikeja Hot. They are the major movers of the market for last week. All the likes of Danksem, Transcorp, Zenith Bank, UBA. So you can see most banks, Zenith Bank, UBA, Access, GTCO. So you can see all of these banks, losing significantly. A lot of people are selling off, mostly because maybe they have huge holdings on. I think somebody is on this index. Maybe they have huge holdings on this and they're just selling off to reduce the taxable gains that could arise as a result of the CGT. These are things that you put in your your report. So you give what the market lost by 2.26%. What were the major movers of those losses? So we saw Danksem, we saw Transport, we saw some banks, and those losses in those tickers were able to offset the gains that we saw in Nestle, saw in UACN, Ikeja Hotel, Julius Berger. Right. So then after that, you now say, look, go to sectoral performance. Which sectors performed well? Which sectors didn't perform well? Then you go into your outlook for the week. What do you think is going to happen next week? Do you think the bearish sentiment is going to continue, or do you think it's not going to continue? If it's going to continue, what should investors do? Should they buy now that prices are cheaper, or should they wait it out? These are the things that you should consider writing in your market report. And if you're presenting it, you can do a chart of be 4 consecutive weeks of losses that the market has lost. Try to speak to each week and then give a story behind it, and then always make sure to end your presentations with recommendation for investors. I think I'll just stop here because my battery is already going down. And yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Calista. For your battery goes down, just want to say a very big thank you. The Bloomberg, sorry. I don't know if there's anyone like me, but I think the first time I saw that Bloomberg, it looked like this Chinese outlay and all that. Well, yeah, thank you for your time. And thank you for sharing, this knowledge with us. And we can assure you that going forward, we'll do better in our research and our presentation. And to everyone that joined, thank you so much for being an attentive and engaging audience. Thank you for joining the session to gain knowledge on research. And I hope that in our future research sessions, starting from Monday, we'll start to see improvements in our research and presentation. So yeah, I think that will be all. Thank you guys for joining once again, and have a lovely day. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.